Hello everyone, this is Reza Dorrani. Today's video is about generating PDF from Power Apps data. We will pass the data dynamically as parameters from Power Apps to Flow, leverage the OneDrive connector and Flow to create a nicely formatted HTML from the incoming data and convert that HTML into a PDF file which can be stored in any data source or sent out as an email attachment. I will also showcase how we can include tables and embed images in the generated PDF. The technique that I will showcase in the video will not require any premium licensing. So let's get started with the video, but first, my introduction. In order to export data from Power Apps to PDF, we will leverage the standard connector OneDrive for Business. As part of the OneDrive for Business connector, we have actions here to create a file, and this action requires the file content that needs to be in binary format, the name of the file along with its extension, and the path where you would like to save it in OneDrive. We also have actions to convert a created file. So if we were to create an HTML file using the create file action, we can then use the convert file action to go ahead and convert the HTML file into a different format. And if we click on the OneDrive conversions link here, we can look at all those supported conversion formats. One of them is PDF. So if our source extension is any of these, we can successfully convert it to PDF using the convert file action from the OneDrive for Business connector. One important caveat to note here is that when we are converting from HTML to PDF using this connector, the HTML content length cannot be greater than 2 MB. Now, keeping all of this in mind, let's go to Power Automate. And for the first scenario here, I will create an instant cloud flow. I'll pick the manual trigger. I will add a new step, use the compose action. And this is where I will go ahead and define my HTML. So here on w3schools.com, I have a sample HTML. If I click on try it yourself, I can see the HTML text that's showing up right here. So I'll just go ahead and copy my HTML, go to Flow, plug it in the compose action. Once I have my HTML defined here, I will go ahead and add a new step, and I will use the create file action from OneDrive for Business. I need to define a unique path to the folder in OneDrive where I would like to create this file. If I click on this show picker option here, I can pick a specific folder in OneDrive. I can stick to the root, or if I would like to store them in a specific folder which may or may not exist, but the action will create it for me. So let's say PDF. I've just plugged in my folder path. Next, it's asking me for the name of my file. In this case, I'm going to call it sample.html. The extension is important here because I'm passing HTML data as the content of this file. For the file content, I will head over to dynamic content and select the compose action output. So this action will go ahead and create that file for me in OneDrive. Next, I will use the convert file action from OneDrive for Business. For the file property, under dynamic content, I will pick the ID from the create file action. And for the target type, here are 4 options that are available for us. I will pick PDF. So this will convert this file into PDF format. I can go ahead and either store it in my system of record, maybe store it in SharePoint, Azure Blob, or just go ahead and send it as an email attachment. So for that, I will use the send an email action. Select my user, provide the subject and body for the email, head over to show advanced options, and right here in the attachment section, for the attachment name, I will select the file name from the convert file action. And for the content, I will select the file content from the convert file action. I will go ahead and save my flow. Next, I will go ahead and test this flow. So test, I will run this manually, click on test, ensure my connectors are in place, click continue, and run the flow. So my flow completes successfully. If I head over to Outlook, I get an email here that has a PDF attached. And if I select that, I get that same HTML that I added into my compose action, and the HTML file has been converted to a PDF file. In my OneDrive, I get a folder created called PDF, and in there I have that sample HTML file. Now that we've seen how we can leverage this technique to create a PDF file, let's try and see how we can dynamically generate data in the HTML. So here in my second use case, I have once again added simple HTML here. And this HTML basically creates a certificate style content. And in this, I would like to go ahead and add some dynamic data. For example, I have hard-coded the text username right here. So I will remove this, go to dynamic content and pick the username, which is the name of the user who has triggered the flow. For the date, I will go to expressions, use the format datetime expression, and format UTC now to month, day, and year. Next, I have the name of my course. In my trigger itself, I can add an input, can use text, can call this course name, and here instead of hard-coded text, I will replace this with the dynamic content for course name. I also have a text for score. I will add another input here of type number, call this score, and replace the text here with the dynamic content for score. Now that I have my HTML defined here, once again, I'll go ahead and save this. Let's try and run this flow. Here are those two input parameters. It's asking me for the course name. Call this Power Platform. And let's say I got a score of 90 out of 100. I will click Run My Flow. Click Done. The flow will trigger. The compose action will have my HTML content created with all those dynamic values that I passed. And once again, follow the same process and send me an email which has the certificate style HTML in a PDF format. Now, another thing that you can add in this HTML is images. Now, to add an image, I will add an image tag, and here I need to provide the source of that image. Now, for the image source, if you provide a direct link to an image, it will not render the image in that converted PDF file. The key here is that the source needs to be in data URI format. So let's see how we can enter the source here in that data URI format and grab the image from a data source. In my scenario here, I have a SharePoint document library called Pictures. I have uploaded an image called Microsoft Certified, which has the logo for Microsoft certification. So let's see how we can grab this and then convert it into data URI and plug it into the source property for the image tag in my HTML. So to grab that file content, I will add an action, search for file content. I will use the get file content SharePoint action. provide my site address. And for the file identifier, I will go ahead and pick it directly from my pictures library. And here is that picture that I uploaded. So this action will give me the content of the file, but I need that in data URI format. So inside my source property here, I will go to expressions. So the expression is data URI, and we need to provide the content of the file. So I'm going to select the file content here from dynamic content. And this completes my expression. I will also provide a width of 200 pixels here for my image file and add a few breakpoints after the image so that there's a space between the image and the beginning of the text that says certificate of completion. I will click on save. Your HTML has to be complete. If there are any tags that are incomplete or tags that are not closed, you will see issues in your exported PDF file. Once again, I'll go ahead and run my flow, give my course name, give a score, and run the flow. If we look at the flow run, the get file content provides the file content in the following format. And if we look at the compose action, specifically the source of my image tag, you will see that it is presenting the file content in data URI format right here. And if I head over to my email, here is my latest email, here is my PDF, and in my PDF document here, I can see that image right here that I embedded as part of the HTML that I plugged in. Now that we've understood how to go ahead and create PDFs using Power Automate, let's see how we can send data from Power Apps to Power Automate and dynamically generate that HTML and the PDF file. So in Power Apps here, I have a simple table, the items for which is coming from a SharePoint list called Service Desk. If I go to Data Sources, go to Service Desk, go to Edit Data, this takes me to the backend SharePoint list that has all my information. Now right here in my Power App, I have added a simple icon for PDF. And on select of this icon, I go ahead and call a flow. And to this flow, I'm passing the email of the logged in user. And then I notify the user that the service desk report is sent to you in an email. And this is what my flow looks like. So the flow is being triggered from Power Apps. Here is a compose action, the data for which is coming from Power Apps. And that's the user email that's being passed as a parameter from Power Apps to flow. Next, in flow itself, I'm executing the get items query to get all the items from my service desk SharePoint list. Then I use a select data operation. I'm passing the value, which is an array of all the information that's retrieved from the get items action. And within that, I'm just gathering 4 data points: the title, department, priority, and status. And these are specific columns here that I'm grabbing from my data set. I do not want all the information as part of my PDF that I'm generating. Next, I use the create HTML table data operation. And all this needs is an array. And the output of the select action is an array that I'm providing right here. Once I have my HTML table ready, I have added a compose action in which I'm building my final HTML. Here, I've added a style tag in which I'm defining the styles for my table, background color, color for the table header, and so on and so forth. And at the end, I'm plugging in the output of the create HTML table action. Once I have this HTML defined, my process is exactly the same. I'm creating a file in my OneDrive, giving this file a name as service-report.html. Then I'm converting this file to PDF. And as part of this email, I have that converted file as an attachment. So if I head back to Power Apps and play the app and just click on this icon, the flow will get triggered. The user will receive a message that the report is being sent in an email. And if I head over to my Outlook, I get that email that has the service desk report attached. If I select this, I get that HTML that I created in my flow. It says service desk report, and here are the 4 columns that I selected. The width here of the PDF that gets generated is A4 size. So if I was to select all the columns as part of my table here, it will cut off or truncate on the sides. So you have to ensure that you are within that A4 size limit. If you would like to go beyond these, then you would have to look at third-party connectors like Encodian or Muhimbi. Next, as part of my Power App, once again, I have the data from my service desk list. And here, I have added a very simple filter on the status column. So the user can select an existing status. Let's say, show me all my service desk tickets that are newly created. So if I select new, I only see the tickets that are new. So I'm filtering my data in Power Apps. And let's say I would like to create a PDF for this filtered data. So for this, on select of the PDF icon, I'm calling another flow. And for this flow, I'm passing 2 pieces of information. One, the email of the user. Second, I'm passing the data. Now for sending the data from Power Apps to Flow, I am using the filter function here to query my data source, where the status is the value of the status in the dropdown. So it's going to get me the filtered data. And then I am sending this filtered data in JSON format. This is something that I covered earlier as well as part of a video that I created for exporting data to Excel. I will place that link in the description of this video, so do check that one out. And for this flow, I have my first compose action, the data for which is coming from the first parameter, which is the email of the user. And then I have a second compose action, which is that JSON data that I'm passing over to Flow from Power Apps. Next, I am using the select action once again. And for the from property of the select action, I'm using an expression. The function here is JSON of the data that's coming from Power Apps. Now I have this array here. I'm using the select action. I can select specific data points from my JSON data. I only want the ID and the title, so I'm using ID and title. And the steps following this are exactly the same as before. Create the HTML table, add a compose action here to create the actual HTML, which has some style tags in here, and then the data for the table, create the file, convert the file, send the email out. So let's go ahead and test this. I only have 2 tickets here where the status is new. I will click on PDF. This will trigger the flow. And the flow has sent me an email here with that PDF document. And right here, I only see those 2 tickets, which were need parking access card and need banner for upcoming webinar. Both of these tickets have the status new. And we can see that right here in Power Apps as well. So that's how you can pass tabular data dynamically from Power Apps to Flow and leverage that same OneDrive for Business connector actions to create your PDF file on the fly. Bear in mind, right now, I'm just sending that PDF file as an email attachment. You can easily store that in any data source of your choice. So let's say I would like to store it in SharePoint. So I'll use the create file action in SharePoint, pick my SharePoint site, pick the library where I would like to store the file. I'll store that file in my documents library. The name of my file will be the converted file name, and the content would be the file content from the converted file action. Go ahead and save this flow. Back to my app, This time, let's say I filter my tickets for status closed. I have a couple of tickets here as well. These are my ticket titles. I will go ahead and click on PDF, which will trigger the flow. It's gone ahead and sent me an email with that filtered data set from Power Apps. And not just that, if I head over to the documents library, because I used that create file action, here is my PDF file in my SharePoint document library. And as part of my final demo, I have an inspection app, the data for which is coming from a SharePoint list. And this is an inspection app, so you can go and add content, take pictures for doing any sort of inspection. The gallery here shows me all my current data. So let's say I select my home inspection new build. I can see all the pictures that were taken and all the information and notes captured as part of this process. And right here, I have that PDF icon here as well. Now, if I go ahead and click this will go ahead and email out the inspection report to me as a PDF file. I received this email, which has the inspection report for the home inspection item. If I select the PDF document, I have all the data from that inspection item right here in my PDF file. So inspection report for the title, which was passed dynamically, the inspection date, it's passed dynamically, the notes for the inspection, and then the photos that were captured as part of the inspection process. And I have all those photos numbered as well. I can download this. I could have saved it in OneDrive, SharePoint, any data source of my choice. I can even go ahead and print this. And for the flow, for the inspection report PDF, once again, the trigger is Power Apps. In this case, I'm just passing the ID of the item from Power Apps to flow. Then I'm calling the get item action to get the properties of that item from my SharePoint list. For all the pictures associated with my item, I have uploaded them as attachments for my SharePoint list item. So I'm using the get attachments action to get all those attachments. I've initialized a couple of variables here. One is a variable of type array. This will include the HTML for all my images once I loop through all my attachments. And I also have a variable here of type integer. This basically is my counter that increments as I start looping through the images. And that's how I was generating the number for my images in my PDF document. I have an apply to each loop here to loop through all the images. I go and grab the content of the attachment. And then right here, I'm appending data to that array variable. And here is the HTML created on the fly dynamically for the images. So I'm creating that image tag, defining the width. Once again, I'm using that data URI function to get the URI format for the attachment content. I'm also plugging in the value of the counter and then incrementing the counter by 1. And then I go ahead and generate my HTML, which has all those data points coming in dynamically right here. And at the bottom for the images, I'm using an expression function called join, wherein I'm joining all the data from that array variable, which is the variable that creates these images. Once I have all of this defined, the next steps are more or less the same. I create the file in my OneDrive. I convert the file to PDF and then attach that in my email. Water softener system inspection right here. I'll click on PDF. This will generate the PDF file. I've received the email. Here is the attached PDF. And this time it has all the information for the water softener system line item in my SharePoint list, including all the pictures. Please note that if you need headers and footers, page numbers, line breaks as part of the HTML, it will involve a lot of calculations because the CSS for line breaks is not supported using the convert file action when you convert it to PDF. Ideally, I would recommend you go with those third-party options, either Encodian, Mohimbi. For simple use cases, the OneDrive convert to PDF action works pretty well, as you saw as part of my video. If you enjoyed this video, then do like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And thank you so much for watching.